Hi students, welcome to the Structural Engineering lectures and welcome to the new playlist on the design of steel structures. Right? In today's class, conforming to limit state method IS 800-2007. In today's class, we shall see the design of compression members. Particularly, we will see a problem where we will try to find out the design strength of a compression member. Like this, a section is given where we will try to find out the design compression strength of the given member. Before that, we will see the codal specifications. Codal specification conforming to IS 800-2007, particularly for that of these compression members. Right? In the previous class, we have seen the analysis and design of tension members. Particularly, we have seen the design of a lug angle, right? Like this, lug angle connected to the main angle, lug angle connected to main angle. Right? Both of these angles are connected to one side of a gusset plate. Right? I hope you enjoyed the discussions there. If you really enjoyed the discussions, right, don't forget to click like, comment, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Right? Now, let us see the brief profile of the speaker. That is mine. I, Dr. D. Rupesh Kumar, obtained my BTech Civil Engineering from Nagarjuna University in 1994, MTech Structural Engineering from JNTU Hyderabad in 2000, and PhD Structural Engineering from JNTU Hyderabad 2009. Presently, I am working as Associate Professor in Department of Civil Engineering, University College of Engineering, Hyderabad, Telangana University, Telangana State. Right? I have an experience of 27 years, of which 7 years is in industry and 20 years is in teaching and research at graduate and postgraduate levels. Right? My research areas include reinforced cement concrete designs, structural steel designs, structural analysis, point element analysis, earthquake engineering, wedge engineering, structural optimization. I have published 45 research papers in national as well as international journals as well as conferences, organized 3 international conferences and 11 national conferences, workshops, attended 43 workshops, visited 2 countries, delivered 13 guest lectures, edited 2 books, supervising 14 PhD scholars and supervised 30 ME scholars. Right? I am actively involved in various consultancy works that are offered by the department and completed over 750 plus design proof checks as well as 150 plus designs of the reinforced cement concrete design, structural steel, composite, low-rise, high-rise, multi-storied buildings as well as road and rail bridges. Right? Now let us move to the discussion, student. Right? This is how we will be dealing the design of compression members. Right? These are sometimes called the columns, right, or the other terms to what these are referred as stanchions or posts and struts. Right? Whereas the stanchions are the synonym for the columns, as well as another synonym is a post. Right? Both of these words indicate the column itself. Right? Whereas in the case of the bridge trusses as well as that of the roof trusses, right, the compression members are generally referred to as the struts. Right? However, the struts may be continuous or discontinuous. That we'll see. Right? Even in the same roof trusses, we do have, right, either that main compression member, right, principal compression member is what referred to as the principal rafter. Even we do have the common rafters also, right, which are subjected to compression member. Right? In the case of the cranes, right, the compression member is what called the boom. Right? These are the different technical terms referring to the compression members. Right? Now let us see what are the different types of the sections we'll be using, student. Right? Schematically, right, this is how we'll be using. Right? These are the different types of the sections what we'll be using. Right? Either I may have a solid section like this, right, or I may have a hollow, right, solid, square or rectangular section, right, solid, square or rectangular section like this, right, or I may have hollow tubes, right, hollow tubes which are square tubes are that of the rectangular tubes. Right? Accordingly are what called SHS and RHS respectively. However, right, even sometimes we may also be using right, the circular solid sections like this, right, circular solid sections, or we may also be using, right, hollow tubes like this, right. Then these right sections will carry small forces. However, here for the circular sections, the advantage is that the moment of inertia about both the axis, x-axis as well as y-axis, are same. Right? Whereas the same is advantage available for the square hollow section, SHS. Right? There is an advantage. Right? and if the force to be transmitted is small, then we may be using, right, single angle section like this, or we may be using right, double angle sections like this, right, double angle sections, right, connected to either side of a gusset plate, right, like this, connected to either side of a gusset plate like this, right, or like this, right, on either side of a gusset plate, right, there is a gusset plate on either side. I do have, right, there is a single angle section, right, if right, back to back, right, or even sometimes both may be put on the same side of a gusset plate, right, like this, both may also be put like on the same side of a gusset plate, on the same side of a gusset plate, right, as appropriate, right. However, here also these angles, right, either single angle, right, as well as it cannot furnish the required area, then we may provide two angles back to back, right. However, if more moment of inertia is required, even from bending point of view, right, or more radius of gyration is required from Stanley's ratio point of view, then what we can do is that even we can use four angles, right, forming a column section like this, right, forming a column section, right. Now just I'm showing the half symmetry, right, therefore even like that I do have the half symmetry, almost looks like a box section, right, which are connected by means of the lacing, like this, right, either lacings or battens, right, lacings or battens like this, right, on both the sides as well as on the sides also. These may be connected by means of lacings or battens like this, right. Or sometimes what happens is, right, these two angles, right, these two angles may be, right, provided right, like this back to back, right, to form as the flange of an eye section, right, like this, right, and there I may have either the lacing, right, provided like this, right, so that it looks like a flange, right, whereas this lacing, right, is in there in the web part, right. Even similarly I do have in the tension zone also two angles back to back, right, that is almost it forms like an eye section, right, like this, right. Then if more moment of inertia is required, then what we can do is that right, even we can add a plate, right, like this, right. If more moment of inertia is required or more slenderness ratio is required, then even I can add one plate, right, or two plates also, right. And that is how the next section, right. Even now we can see just we have added one plate extra, right, one plate extra, so that it will carry more load, or more moment of inertia also. Or sometimes we may also be using, right, two channels, right, toe to toe, right, facing each other, right, like this, two channels. Though I'm showing angle, right, like that, right, you may see two channels facing each other like this. Or sometimes we may also be using two channels back to back like this, right, two channels back to back, though I'm showing angle, right, like this, back to back, right. However, this spacing between the two angles, right, this spacing between the two angles can be varied to the required level of the moment of inertia, right. Therefore, keeping in how much of moment of inertia is required, then accordingly this can be varied, right. This spacing s can be increased, right. However, sometimes what happens is, right, in order to increase the moment of inertia as the Stanley's ratio, even these two angles, two channels facing each other, may be generally connected by means of a lacing, right, even at the bottom lacing, right. Whereas if the moment of inertia required is more, then we may put a plate in the compression zone as well as in the tension zone like this, right, compression zone, right. And now you can see that two angles are provided by means of and a plate in the compression zone as well as in the tension zone also, right, in the tension zone, right. That is how this section. Or we may be right, putting the two channels totally back to back, so that it almost forms, right, these two flanges will form the web part, right. These legs will form the flange part in the tension zone as well as the compression zone, right? That is how this section, right? This section, right? However, now that is how, if less amount of inertia is required, then these two channels may be directly flushing back to back. This can be provided like this, right? If somewhat more amount of inertia is required, then we can put some spacing, right, or facing each other like this, either of these two, right? However, further more amount of inertia or more area is required, then we may provide the plates, one or two or not more than two plates can be provided, right? At maximum three plates, not more than three plates, right? That is how these can be provided, right? Or we may also be using, right, the Indian standard wide flange beams, right? If these are not able to furnish these wide flange beams are not able to furnish the required area, then we may also be putting, right, one or two more plates, right? One or two more plates like this, right? One plate, or even I may be putting another plate like this, right? Another plate, right? Two or three flange plates, like this, right? Therefore, that is how, so that it increases the moment of inertia, as well as that of the Steinhaus ratio about vertical axis or horizontal axis, right? Like this, right? Now, or what happens is, even between these two channels, right, we may put a beam section, right? Therefore, it is almost a compound section, right? Or what we can do is, right, these four channels can be these four angles may be provided, right? Like this, right? These these two angles are provided like this, right? Like this, as well as, right, at the bottom they are provided like this, right? So that, right, they forms, right, this forms a web part, right? This part forms the flange, compression flange as well as tension flange, right? Like that, even another web, second web, right? And therefore, that is how this section, it furnishes more moment of inertia as well as more Steinhaus ratio, right? Or if further moment of inertia need to be increased, then what we can do is, right, now we can put, right, one or two more cover plates like this, right? One or two, or at maximum three cover plates, not more than that, right? Not more than that one, right? That is all. Or what we can do is that, right, these channels, right, these previously these channels, right, just were provided by a lacing side. Now those channels can which were facing each other can also be provided by means of a regular plate, like this, right? These are two channels are facing each other, right? Now if I put a plate, right, like this, right, then there forms a box section, right, in compression zone as well as tension zone. Now there forms a box section, right? Right? Then this is the box section, right? Or what we can do is that, right, these two channels, right? These two channels can be, if more depth is required, then I can take plates, right, and I can form a web, right? Even I can take another plate, right? Then I can do welding, right? So that it forms a section, channel section like this, right? I can do welding, right? Therefore, if more depth is required, more amount of is required, then welded plated girder section I can use like this, right? Two channels back to back, or even you may use one or two plates as appropriate, right? Or in between, even you can use an Indian standard beam section also, right? So that it increases the moment of inertia, right? Therefore, all these sections will carry heavy loads here onwards, right? This section or this section, right? Or even what we can do is, even we can now add for the previous section one or two cover plates, right? Therefore, this is what called almost now a box section, right? Single cell box section, right? Even if I have, right, these are the first web, these are the second web. Now I would have similarly first web, second web, third web, right? Therefore, this is what called two cell box section. Therefore, this will carry heavy load along with another one or two cover plates, right? These are the different sections which will be using as compression member, student. I hope you understood this. Now let us see the other schematics, student. These of, even generally we'll be using these as struts. In the case of the trusses, therefore the struts may be two angles, right, back to back, two angles back to back like this, right, provided on one side of a gusset plate, provided on one side of a gusset plate, student, like this, right, provided on one side of a gusset plate, right, right, or it may be a single angle connected to one side of a gusset plate also as appropriate, right, or they may back to back like this, or even they may be back to back like this also, right, on either side of a gusset plate, right. These are the different sections with the angles, right, angles like this, right, two angles back to back are provided on same side of a gusset plate, right. These are what called the struts, right, double angle struts, right, or these are the double angle strut provided on either side of a gusset plate, student, right. Even these sections we are used in the tension member designs also, right, even in the tension member designs also by means of the bolted connections like this, right. The same are the sections here also, right. The same section which can be used as a tension member can also be used as a compression member under reversal of stresses cases also, right. Now this is that next section, right. If just now I told that if more load is to be transferred, then I may be using, right, two channels, right, facing each other, right, which are connected by means of lacings like this, right, single lacing, or it may be double lacing, or they may be provided by the battens, right. Either it may be four angles or facing each other, right, or two channels facing each other, right, like this, right, or it may be two eye sections side by side which are connected by means of the lacing or battens also. Therefore this will carry, keeping in view this as the spacing goes on increasing between these two individual components. Therefore these are what called the built up sections, right, as this spacing goes on increasing, right, the more amount of inertia about that either vertical axis that cross section, right, either about this vertical axis in plan, right. Therefore that is how it increases the moment of inertia about this weak axis, right, about this weak axis to it, right. Now these are what called the built up sections, right. Just now I told that we may be having, right, a roof truss wherein this is how principal rafter, right, principal rafter running between this ridge point to that of the eaves strut, gutter point, right, or eaves point. This is also called eaves point, right, where a gutter will also be provided there. For the principal rafter is nothing but the main compression member running from the ridge point to that of the eaves point is what called the principal rafter. This is the main compression member. Similarly, at the bottom I do have from eaves point to other side of the eaves point, right, a member will be running, that is what called the principal tie, right, main principal tie, right, like that. Now if I do analysis, student, then what happens is these will be under the compressions, right. Therefore these are what called the struts, right. This is a discontinuous strut, right, whereas these will be under tension, right, right. And that is how, whereas this principal rafter is a continuous member. However, these principal rafters can generally either be using, right, like these two angles back to back, right, or even this principal tie will also be using two angles back to back, right. However, these struts may be provided by means of two angles back to back, or one single angle provided on one side of a gusset plate, or even it may be like this, right, two angles provided on same side of a gusset plate as appropriate, right. Now keeping in the force in that member, right. Now let us see, once we see the schematic, right, these are what the cleat points, right. These are what called the purlins, right. These are called the purlins, where you would have the cleats, right, or cleat angles, right, over which the sheeting is provided, right. These are what called the purlins, right, over which over these purlins the AC sheeting is provided. Now even we can see that, right, all these struts as well as tie, right, strut and tie model are provided at the intersection to a gusset plate, right, like this, even a gusset plate, right, wherever these members are meeting, they will be meeting, right, at a gusset plate like this, right, like this. Therefore, that is the roof trusses will be having the struts, discontinuous strut as well as continuous strut. Right now, let us see. This is a photograph of a roof truss student. Right now, this is what called use point. Right, this is the main. Right, principal rafter. Right, principal rafter. This is what called a principal rafter is continuous. Now you can see, right, this is continuing over this ridge point to first panel point to second panel point to third panel point to the fourth panel point. Therefore, it is continuous over 1, 2, 3, 4 panel points, right, where it is ending at the eaves point. Eaves point, right? There is a half the truss shape which is provided by means of a strut, and tie. These are the ties, right? And this is bottom principal tie. At the bottom, I would have principal tie. Therefore, this is basically a tension member student. This is basically primarily a compression member, continuous compression member, continuous tension member, right? Whereas this is discontinuous. This is discontinuous strut, right? And now I'm showing another schematic where I do have a roof truss of a warehouse, right? Where this truss geometry shown, right? It is now having the strut as well as tie. Now you can say I do have a strut as well as tie model, right? Strut tie model, right? Therefore, this truss is supported at the both the ends on ISMB columns or ISHB columns, right? Like this, right? Therefore, this is what called one bay, second bay, third, fourth, 5, 6, 7. 7 bays are there, right? One, right? Second bay. Now you can see that, right? Connecting these two bays, we will have the bracings, so that under the wind, right? This entire shed or warehouse is not subjected to torsion. It is not subjected to torsion or twisting, right? Therefore, these are the bracings, right? Like this, now I have first bay, second bay, third, fourth, 5, 6, 7th bay, right? Even you can see that all these are connected by means of a tie here, so that all will be acting as a one unit, right? All columns will be deflecting by same amount and acting as a one unit, right? Even we can see here a tie rod, right? A tie rod, right? And these are Indian standard rolled steel beam sections are used as the columns here, right? These columns, right? Now, which are provided over the footings or pedestals, right? Pedestals, right? Now, let us see also the other schematic. This is also another schematic where now we can see that, right? These are erecting. These people are erecting the end member, eaves end member, right? Therefore, this is how the ridge point, right? Ridge point, right? Is a purlin, right? Second purlin, third purlin, fourth purlin. This is the last purlin over which the roofing will be put, right? If we'll be putting the roofing, right? Therefore, this is how the ridge point, right? Right? Tie strut, right? This is a principal rafter, continuous principal rafter, and bottom tie, main tie, right? Main tie, right? Even now we can see that this entire roof truss is supported on either ends, right? On a column cap, like this, right? On a column cap, um, on a rolled steel beam section, right? Now, however, those designs of the column caps and at the base we do have the slab base also. Those designs we will see in the next class, student, right? Then these are just a schematic. Just now we already seen, right? These are the principal rafter, right? These are the purlin points, student, right? And this is what called sometimes the top chord or the principal rafter, right? Even this is the ridge point or apex point or peak point, right? Where these are the different members. This is what called the strut, and this is called tie, right? Strut and tie model, right? And even I do have at the bottom principal tie, right? Even splices may be provided. These are the joints, right? And even we do have the runners running in the length direction, right? Connecting the different base perpendicular plane of the board, right? This is what called the clear span of this truss, as well as the center to center distance is what called the nominal or center to center distance, right? Now, next one, Next one is this is a single angle. Single angle may be connected to one side of a gazette plate student, right? Discontinuous strut or continuous strut as appropriate, right? This is another section, right? This is also the same section. Single angle connected to one side of a gazette plate. Single angle connected to one side of a gazette plate by means of either one bolt or two bolts or more number of bolts. Now in the previous case I have said, right, one bolt, or it may be connected by means of two bolts like this, right? Two bolts, right? The two bolts also like this, right? Or more number of bolts as appropriate. Now even I am showing a schematic, right? This is how it is connected to a gazette plate. This may be subjected to either compression or tension as appropriate. However, under the reversal of stresses cases, that same member which was carrying the tension will also be carrying now the compression like this, right? Schematic as well as the 3D view, right? These are a column section, right? Generally ISHB sections will be used as a column sections, right? Right? This is a compression member, right? Compression member, right? Now, another schematic wherein I am showing a warehouse building, right? Where I do have IS, right? These rolled steel beam sections are used as the compression members, right? Even the same rolled steel sections are also used as the the principal rafter, right? Actually, there is no truss, right? The truss itself is directly consisting of actually a an angle, a beam section, right? A beam section, right? There is a that beam section is having a slope, right? Nominal slope, right? Over which we can see that, right? We can see that, right? These channel purlins are provided. Channel purlins are provided at regular intervals so that we can support the roof sheeting over these purlins. Right? Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth, right? So on and so forth, right? Now even at the end, we can see that, right? These are the same, either channel sections may be provided, or light gauge jet section purlins can also be provided. Even this can also be a jet section purlin as appropriate, right? Even this is particularly a jet section purlin, student, right? To which the side sheeting will be connected. Side sheeting will be connected, right? And after connection of these side sheets from inside, right, we can construct the brick wall up to the required height, right? Rest of the will be there with just side sheeting only, right? Now next one, even at the end we can see, right, the gable end, right? These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth, right? All these, right? This is what called one bay, second bay, third bay, so on and so forth, right? So on and so forth, right? Even now you can see that these beam column junctions are the fixed, right? Are moment resistant connections. Now even you can see, right, moment resistant connections, right? Moment resistant connections are provided here, right? Now even all these columns will be provided on the gazette, the slab basis, those slab basis designs we will see in the next class, student, right? Now this is how generally we will be seeing at petrol bunks or fuel stations, right? This is a typical petrol bunk or fuel station where I do have the entire truss is supported on two columns, right? This entire truss having this actually 3D truss, right? 3D truss, complex 3D truss is supported on just two columns, right? 2 and 2, just 6 columns, right? The complex 3D truss, student, right? This is having a truss which itself is supporting, right? Even above that you would have the 3D truss, right? Over which sheeting will be provided, right? This is how the columns, right? Compression members generally provided by means of the rolled steel beam sections, right? Now or even we may also using, right? Sometimes these, just now I told that square hollow section, right? Or rectangular hollow section, or circular tubes, right? These are rectangular hollow tubes, hollow section, RHS, HS, SHS, SHS. However, these designs are governed by IS 1161 student, not IS 800, right? Therefore, for design of these compression members of this that of these round tubular sections, we need to refer IS 1161, right? Now, these are we already seen, right? These beam sections are wide flange beam sections, are channel sections, are single angle section, or single T sections may be used, or these hollow pipe sections are square or rectangular hollow sections are solid bars, or that of the plates may be used for smaller loads, right? These are for smaller loads. As slowly load increases, that is how the higher sections can be used, right? Higher sections, single sections, right? Or sometimes these round rectangular bars, including that of the I bars, may also be used, right? Or angle section, or two angles, we already seen that, right? Or we already seen that two channels facing each other connected by means of the lacings, right? Or even a built up box section may also be used for higher load carrying capacities, or if you require more amount of inertia. Or these square round tubular sections may also be used as the column sections, right? Now I'm showing, right, the schematics of a bridge wherein I do have, right, this is a 300-meter single lane steel cable suspension bridge, which is called the Bairang Bridge along the Siang River in Arunachal Pradesh, which is commissioned in 2019, just recently situated. Therefore, I do have this cables are suspended from this tendons, right, or bunch of cables, right? Therefore, there is a now we can see that this is just a single angle, right? And now I do have, this is a compression member, this is a tension member. Therefore, this is a strut and tie model, right? Strut and tie model, right? These are in bridges generally will be using either single angles or single channels as strut and tie. Now, whereas even double angles may also be used, keeping in view the requirement of the force, right? How much force we need to transfer, right? Even at the bottom we do have this, right, a girder which is connected to the bridge at the bottom, right, over which the pedestrian will be permitted, or vehicular traffic will be permitted as appropriate, right? Now I'm showing a column section with rolled steel beam section, right? This is a column section, right, to which two beams are connected like this, right? Even now we can see that two inclined members are connected. These are generally subjected to tension forces, right? Tension force connected by means of the high strength friction grip bolts, HSFG bolts, right? Now, this is how these beams are also using the beam sections, right? And now I'm showing another schematic where a compression member is provided by means of a gusset plate, where from I do have the cross bracing, right? Therefore, this bracing and this bracing both are meeting here, right? Therefore, that is how it is called the cross bracing. Whereas this is a column section, right? Now, this is how you can see these are provided by means of high strength friction grip bolts, right? Right? And now you can see that these members are provided by means of two channels back to back, right? Now I'm showing another schematic where an rolled steel beam section which is welded to the beam section. This is totally rigid connection, student. Now you can see it is welded actually, right? It is welded. Therefore, it is totally rigid connection, right? Whereas the splices are provided by means of the bolts. However, the main joint is totally welded. Therefore, it is a rigid connection, right? Now, whereas in the case of earthquake resistant design, the beam, right, this beam column joint should not undergo deformation, right? However, the deformation may happen at a particular distance away from this beam column junction so as to avoid the global failure. Local failure may be permitted. Therefore, if you are providing these splices at particular distance away from these beam column junctions, right, this beam may fail, leading to the local failure. Whereas if this beam itself is failing at the intersection of this column, then along with that, that column will also fail, leading to that of the global failure. Therefore, in order to avoid that, generally in multi-stored buildings, right, all the this beam and column junctions are rigid connections only, right, rigid connections only, right. These are what called the non-sway frame, right. Now, however, these buckling phenomena we'll see at a later point, right. Now, once we examine this student, let us move quickly to that of the other discussion student, right, other discussions, right. Just now we have seen these types of the section set, single and double angle section set. Now let us see the effective length, right. Now let me go to the IS 800 2007 table 11 page number 45 student, right. Let me go to the page number 45 there. Now these are the class 6 class 7 of this page number 34 of IS 800 2007 gives the codal specifications pertaining to that of the design of the compression members, right. Now let us see these, right. Let me go to this page, right, where I do have this effective lengths, right. I need to go to this page, just wait for a moment, right. I need to go to this page number 45 student, right. Let me go to that page number 45, right. Therefore this is on that page number 45 where the effective length of prismatic compression members means that of the rolled steel beam sections, right, or that of the two channels back to back, like all these are what are the prismatic compression members, right. Therefore these are the boundary condition at one end restrained means no translation is possible at this one end, as well as rotation is also restrained means no rotation occurs, right, no rotation occurs like this, right. Therefore it neither translates in acceleration nor rotates, therefore it is totally restrained in translation restraint as well as rotation restraint means it is a fixed at the base, whereas at the other end it is free like this, it is free means at the other end translation is possible, right, as well as now you can see it is rotation is also possible, right, therefore in such a case, right, or the other case may be like this, right, at one end it is free, right, it is free means translation is free means it can translate whereas rotation is also free, right, rotation is also free means rotation can happen, right, at the other end, right, translation can happen, right, it can translate like this, right? Whereas the rotation is restrained, right, restrained means it is perfectly 90 degree to that of the support, right. In such case also, for both of these cases, that effective length factor K is 2 times the actual length, right. This is a schematic representation for both of these, right. Now this you have already seen in strength of material student, right. Next one is restrained at one end and restrained in translation as well as free in rotation at one end and as well as at the other end, right, means at both the ends this is hinged, then you already know from Euler's buckling formula that L effective length factor is equal to 1, therefore 1, that is how effective length factor K is equal to 1 times L, right, because both the ends are hinged, right. Whereas the next case is that one end is fixed, the other end is, right, therefore one end is fixed means it neither translates nor that of the rotation occurs, but at the other end it just translates like this, it just translates like this. This is how the figure should, right. However, it cannot undergo rotation like this, right, it just translates like this, right, student, right. Therefore in such a case, right, the effective length factor is equal to 1.2, whereas one end is fixed and the other end is hinged. Therefore in such case, right, therefore at one end right? Translation restrained, rotation restrained, whereas at the other end translation restrained, but rotation is possible here. Rotation is possible. Therefore, in such case, k is equal to 0.8. Right now, we can see that both ends are hinged. Right, therefore, neither translation nor rotation is permissible. In which case, the effective length factor is equal to 0.65. 0.65. Where L is the unsupported length. Right, of the compression member. Right now, once we see this, let us also see the other product specification. A quicker page student. Right now. Let us see that is for the rolled steel beam sections are that of the regular section student. However, for these single and double angle struts, right, whether continuous or discontinuous strut. Now let me go to the page number 47. There it is given what are the effective length factors from page number 47, right, from page number 47. Right now this is right. Therefore, angle strut like this, right, for single angle strut, right, the compression in single angle strut may be transferred either concentrically to its centroid through the end gusset pit, or eccentrically by connecting one side of its leg to a gusset or adjacent member, right, as appropriate. However, if at all they are subjected to concentric loading, then if a single angle is concentrically loaded in compression, the design strength may be evaluated using class 7.1.2 student, right, 7.1.2 that we will see. However, now code says that if it is loaded through one leg only, like this, right, loaded through one leg only, then the flexible torsional buckling strength of the single angle loaded in compression through one of its leg may be evaluated using this equivalent stiffness ratio lambda E, which is given by square root of, right, K1 plus K2 lambda VV, right, stiffness ratio about minor principal axis whole square lambda VV whole square plus K3 multiplied by lambda psi whole square, right, where K1, K2, K3 are the constants depending upon the end conditions as given in table 12, right, where lambda VV is L by RVV divided by epsilon pi square epsilon divided by 250 under root, right, and also lambda pi is equal to beta 1 plus beta 2 divided by 2t divided by epsilon 1 plus pi square e student, not epsilon, pi square e divided by 250, where L is the center to center distance of the corresponding member and RVV is the radius of gyration about the minor axis, right, and B1 B2 are the width of the two legs of the angle, right, width of these two legs, right, B1 and B2 respectively, right, and T is the thickness of one leg, right, and epsilon is the yield stress ratio given by square root of 250 divided by Fy, square root of 250 divided by Fy, right. Now, therefore, these K1, K2, K3 are given in this table 12, right. They are keeping you the number of bolts, right. If I would have more than two number of bolts, and if the gusset connecting member fixity is fixed, then K1 is equal to 0.2, then K2 is equal to 0.35, and K3 is equal to 20. If at all, if that connectivity is hinged with two number of bolts, then K1 is equal to 0.7 and K2 is equal to 0.6 and K3 is equal to 0.5. Similarly, if number of bolts is only 1, then if it is fixed, right, if it is fixed, then K1 is equal to 0.75, K2 is equal to 0.35 and K3 is equal to 20. If it all is hinged, then K1 is equal to 1.25, K2 is equal to 0.5 and K3 is equal to 60 respectively, right. These are for the single angle strut, right, whereas for the double angle struts, right, for double angle discontinuous struts, sorry student, right, for double angle discontinuous struts, now I do have connected back to back, right, connected back to back like this, and on opposite sides of the gusset plate like this, right, connected back to back on opposite sides of the gusset plates, right, are a section, but not less than 2 bolts, right, 2 bolts or 2 rivets like this, right, not less than 2 bolts or 2 rivets in line along the angles at each end by equivalent welding. The load may be regarded as applied axially, right. The effective length KL in the plane of the end gusset shall be taken as between 0.7 to 0.85 times the distance between the intersections depending upon the degree of restraint provided. The effective length KL in the perpendicular direction of the end of the gusset plate shall be taken as equal to the distance between the center line, right, between the centers of the intersection. That is for the double angle. I'll show that in a tabular format also, student, right now. Whereas the angles shall be connected together over their lens so as to satisfy the requirements of the class 7.8 and as well as class 10.2.5, right? And as well as the double angle discontinuous studs connected back to back on back to one side of a gusset plate like this, right? One side of a gusset plate, right? Now I'm showing this, right? On one side of a gusset plate only, right? Like this. They were on two sides of a gusset plate. Now I'm showing on one side of a gusset plate only. Therefore, in such a case, now the code says that by one or more number of bolts in each of these angles, right? In each angle or by equivalent welding shall be designed in accordance with class 7.5.1, right? Same 7.5.1, right? This 7.1 5.1 means single angle studs. These are assumed to be, right, though these are back to back, these are presumed to be like single angle studs only, right? Single angle studs only, right? Now that is how the codal provision, right? Now whereas coming to the top, even they should satisfy simultaneously class 7.8 as well as 10.2.5 simultaneously, right? Now we'll see that, right? Whereas this is for discontinuous studs, right? Whereas for continuous studs, double angle continuous studs are already shown in the schematic. What is continuous, what is discontinuous stud, right? I hope you know what is the difference between these two, right? Such as those forming the flanges and cords or ties of the trusses, just now shown, right? Or trussed girders or legs of the towers shall be designed as axially loaded compression members, and the effective length shall be taken in accordance with 7.2.4. That will say, right? Whereas these laced columns, these codal specifications we'll see at a later point, right? Now once we see these, the effective lengths of these second type, previously that of the rolled steel sections we have seen, student, effective lengths, right? Now the second one is that of the studs, either single angle or double angle studs, right? Now that is how I'm just giving in a tabular format, student, right? If at all it is a continuous stud, if it is single or double angle stud, right? In the plane of the gusset, what is that effective length? 0.7 to 1 times L, right? In the perpendicular to the plane of the gusset, right? The effective length is equal to 1, right? Similarly, if it is a discontinuous stud, if it is provided by means of single stud connected by means of one bolt only, one bolt or welded as appropriate, in which case the in the plane of the gusset, effective length is equal to 1. Even in the plane perpendicular to the gusset, also 1. Whereas for discontinuous stud, which is provided by means of welded connection, right? However, the welded connections are presumed to be somewhat rigid connections, and therefore in the plane of the gusset, it may be taken as 0.85, whereas in the plane perpendicular to that of the gusset plate, the effective length factor may be taken as 1, right? Whereas for the discontinuous stud, right, double angle discontinuous studs back to back on opposite sides of the gusset plate. Just now we have seen that in the plane of the gusset plate, right, the effective length. Just now we have seen that codal specification 0.7 to 0.85, keeping in view the restraint provided, and whereas perpendicular to that of the plane of the gusset, perpendicular to that of the plane of the gusset, right, it should be 1, right? And these double angle discontinuous studs which are provided back to back on same side of a gusset plate, right? This is discontinuous, then it should be designed as if that of the single angle connected to one side of a gusset plate. Therefore, in the plane of the gusset, the effective length factor is 0.7 to 0.85, whereas in the plane perpendicular to that of the gusset, it should be taken as 1. These codal specifications just now we have examined, right? Now once we see this, now let's also go to the top, the third one, right? Effective length of the stepped columns, right? From page number 124, right? From Annex D of page number 122. Now let me go to that 122, student, right? 122, right? Just wait for a moment. Let me go to that page number 122. 122. This is how the Annex D determination of effective length of the columns, right? This is applicable for method of determining the effective length of the columns in frames, right? One, for the frames, just now we have seen that either it may be a movement resisting frame or that of the sway frame or non-sway frame as appropriate, or braced frame, right? Now the code says that non-sway or braced frame, just now I have shown that that uh, this design, this design, right, is a moment resisting frame, right, a moment resisting frame, or even just now I have shown in this schematic, right, this is a moment resisting frame, right, this is a moment resisting frame, right, this is exactly a moment resisting frame, right, or even now we can say that, right, it, this is also a moment resisting frame, right, moment resisting frame, right. Now therefore in such cases now these codal specifications are applicable, that non-sway frames are braced frames, right. Then if they are now a frame is designed as non-sway frame if the relative displacement between the two adjacent floors is restrained by means of bracings and shear walls. What is that bracing? Already shown in the previous figure student, right? Like this, right? In the previous figure I already showed what is that bracing. I told that it is provided by means of lacing, right? These are the bracing, right, in the case of the bridges, right, and also these are the bracing. Now just wait for a moment, right. These are the lacing, student, right, not this one, right. Now these are the right, these are the bracing, provided, right. Therefore this is what called a braced frame, right. Therefore bracing is provided, right. Therefore these are what called the braced frames. Therefore in such case this codal specification is applicable, right. Therefore these will fall under the category of non-sway frames. Sway is not permitted. Therefore their k is equal to 1 plus 0.145 1 to beta 1 plus beta 2 minus 0.265 beta 1 beta 2 divided by 2 minus 0.364 beta 1 plus beta 2 minus 0.247 beta 1 beta 2, right. Or if it is a sway frame, right, now where if I just remove these, right, bracings, right, therefore bracings are that of the shear walls. In the case of the multi-story buildings, even we may be having the shear walls. Therefore if I just remove this, then this will become a non-sway, so then this non-sway will become a sway frame if I remove this bracings, therefore in such a case this codal specification means moment resisting frame. Then the moment need to be resisted by this beam and column on their own, right, therefore in such case that effective length factor k is given by 1 minus 0.2 beta 1 plus beta 2 minus 0.12 beta 1 beta 2 divided by 1 minus 0.8 beta 1 plus beta 2 plus 0.6 beta 1 beta 2 whole to the power 0.5, where beta 1 beta 2 are given by this beta means summation of the stiffness of the column, summation of the stiffnesses of the columns to that of the ratio of the summation of the stiffness of all the columns to that of the beams, right, where Kc is the effective flexural stiffness of the columns and Kp is the effective flexural stiffness of the beam. In each of these cases, K is given by Ci by L. I is the moment of inertia and L is the actual length, right? That is how from figure 27, column effective length factors for non-sway frames, right? Keeping in view, once you know what is that beta 1, beta 2, you can calculate using this formula, right? It is a non-sway frame, right? Non-sway frame, then you add, what is beta 1, beta 2, right? This is the fixed end to that of the hinged end, right? This is a fixed end along the x-axis to hinged end, right? Let us say I have beta 1 is equal to 0.4, right? Even beta 2 is equal to 0.4. Then, right, now I do have, right, where 0.4 matches with 0.4, right? Therefore there the effective length factor is approximately 0.63, right? You just draw a horizontal as well as draw a vertical here. Therefore wherever both of these lines are matching is the effective length factor K is 0.63 or 0.635 approximately, right? This is how you can get the effective length factor from this figure 27 for non-sway frames. Similarly you can get from the sway frames, right? Now you can see, right, previously there were effective length factors were varying from 0.5 to 0.95 to maximum 1. Now whereas for sway frames, right, it is 1 to almost 5 or more, right? Therefore 1 to 5, right? 1 to 5. Therefore here also you, let's say 0.4, 0.4. Therefore, in which case 0.4, 0.4 both are meeting here approximately at 1.3. Therefore, effective length factor for the same sway frame is 1.3. Whereas if it is a non-sway frame, it is approximately 0.63. That is how the difference, student. Please examine between the non-sway frame to that of the sway frame, the effective length factor, change in effective length factor, right? Where I is the moment of inertia of these members about the axis perpendicular to the plan of the frame, and L is the length of the member equal to that of the center to center distance of the intersection of the members, and C is the correction factor as shown in this table 35, right? This table gives keeping to the far end condition if at all it is pinned, right? Therefore, if at all it is a braced frame, then that correction factor is equal to 1.5 multiplied by 1 minus n bar. If at all it is unbraced frame, then it is 1.5 multiplied by 1 minus n bar. Like that, for rigidly connected to the columns, 1 multiplied by 1 minus n bar. For braced as well as for unbraced frames, it is 1 multiplied by 1 minus 0.2 n bar. For fixed end connections, it is 2 multiplied by 1 minus 0.4 n bar for braced frames, whereas for unbraced frames it is 0.6 7 multiplied by 1 minus 0.4 multiplied by n bar for unbraced frames, where n bar is equal to the applied ratio of the applied load to that of the elastic buckling load, P by PE. That ratio is n bar, right? Now that is how the third one, student, right? Third effective length what we have now examined is for the effective length factor for the columns in the frames, right? Now let us also see the fourth one is the effective length of the stepped columns. If at all I have to have a workshop, then I may be having the stepped columns, so that I may be having the gantry girders may be supported there. Therefore, in such case, they are what called the stepped columns. This is of the fourth discussion. Method of determination of the effective length factor for the stepped columns. Single stepped columns, right, are given in table 36. Right, effective length factor for double stepped columns, right, like this, right? Now you can see that this is single stepped column, student, right? Effective length of the double stepped columns, right? Double stepped columns, right? Double stepped column, right? Now I have double, right? These stepped columns, right? What are these effective length factors are given, right? Now for the single stepped column, let us go to the top, the table 36, right? Therefore now I have to have single. This is the single stepped column, only one step here. Where the column cross section is decreasing, there a gantry girder can be put, so that this space can be used for putting the gantry girder for the movement along the length direction of the workshop, right? Now then if both ends are effectively held in position and restrained, means both ends are hinged, right? Hinged like this. Sorry, both ends are fixed, right? Then effective length coefficients are given by K1 is equal to square root of K1 2 square, K1 1 square multiplied by alpha minus 1 divided by alpha, K2 is equal to K2 K1 divided by C1. It should be less than or equal to 3, where K1 2 and K1 1 are to be taken as per this table 37, right? 37, right? Whereas column parameters for all the cases, right? For all the cases, right? What is L1, L2, right? What is moment of inertia I1, I2? What is that load, right? Coming from that of the gantry girder P1, right? Coming from that of the roof P2. That is how the schematic should. Like that. Now if you see for these single stepped columns for different edge conditions, right? Now one end fixed, the other end hinged, right? One end fixed, the other end free, right? One end fixed, the other end is totally free, like this, right? One end is fixed, the other end is totally free. Therefore, accordingly, you see the effective length coefficients or factors K11, K1, K2, so on and so forth, right? Now, next one is once we see that, similarly you can see the effective length factors for the double stepped columns. You see this figure 29, like this, right? Double step, right? I would have 1, 2. Therefore, now here one small crane can be put here. Here P2 is a main gantry girder, right? This is small crane jib, whereas this is a main gantry girder. This is the load. P3 is the load from the main truss. That is how the parameters. This L1 length, L1, L2, L3, the moment of inertia of this portion is equal to I1, I2, I3. The loads are transferred at these intersections are P1, P2, P3 respectively, right? Therefore, this is how the effective length factors for these double stepped columns are given here using what is K1. K1 is given by this formula, student. I'm not reading that, where K1, K2, K3 are taken from the table 41, and T1 is given by P1 by P3, T2 is equal to P2 divided by P3, and N2 is equal to L2 divided by L1, right? And PAV, this is I prime AV is the average value of the moment of inertia for the lower and middle parts, which is I1 L1 plus I2 L2 divided by L1 L2, right? IAV double prime is the average value of the moment of inertia for the middle and top parts, I2 L2 plus I3 L3 divided by L2 L3, right? Where this coefficient K2 for the middle part of this is given by this formula, K2 is equal to C1 divided by C2, and the coefficient K3 is given by K1 divided by K3, which should be less than or equal to 3. Where these, what is C1, what is C2 and C3 are given in terms of these loads, right? As I say, C2 is equal to L2 divided by L1 square root of I1 divided by I2 multiplied by P2 plus P1 divided by P1 plus P2 plus P3, like that C3 also, right? For the double stepped columns, right? Like this, from table 37 I have coefficient of effective length K12 and K11 for columns with both ends effectively held in position. Just now we have seen, right? They were given in table 37. This is the table 37 keeping in view this I2 to I1 values, right? For different I2 to I1 values, these coefficients of the K1 to K11 for different L2 by L1 equal to these values, right? These values for different I2 by I1 values, right? Then I can have this K12 and K11 values, right? This is a K12 student, for P1 is equal to 0, and this is how for P2 is equal to 0. This is K11, these values, right? Now likewise you please see the coefficients of the effective length from this table 38 and K11 for columns with both ends effectively held in position and restrained against rotation at bottom end only, right? Like this, right? Previously it was right at the other end it was held in position but restrained against rotation, right? Whereas with both ends effectively held in position at one end, whereas held in position and restrained against rotation, right? Whereas here at the other end it is hinged, at bottom end it is fixed, right? Now the table 39, if at all both ends are fixed, right? The both ends are fixed, then what is that K1 value is given, right? If bottom end is fixed and the other end is free, then what is that K1 value are available in table 40. And also from this table 41 I have K1, K2, K3 values, K1, K2, K3 values for different edge conditions. Now we may just go through these codal specifications, right? Now I hope these are the effective lengths of the different column members. Now let me also see the Sterner's ratio, right? Lambda is equal to L by R min. Now let me go to this table 3 of page 20. Let me go to the page 20, student. This is the page 20 means yes. This is what page 20. Maximum value of this effective Sterner's ratio lambda is equal to L by R min. Now I have a member carrying compression loads resulting from the dead loads and live loads or imposed loads only, then lambda should not be greater than 180. Next one is a member subjected to compression forces resulting from only the combination with means wind or earthquake, means dead load plus gyro load or dead load plus gyro load plus wind load or dead load plus earthquake load as appropriate, these combinations, then it is 250, right? Whereas the compression flange of a beam against lateral torsional buckling, then it is 300, right? That is what the Sterner's ratio limits also, student, right? Now once we examine that, we already seen these types of the section, student. Now let us see these types of buckling, right? Whereas here primarily the rolled steel sections will be bending only like this, right? Bending because of the eccentricity of the load. Therefore, they will not be generally subjected to the torsional buckling, right? Therefore, this is what called just simple, right? Flexural bending, flexural bending. What now I'm showing is flexural bending, right? And now we can see that all the compression members of any shape of the cross section will generally fail by the flexural bending only, like this, flexural bending only, right? As per the Euler's buckling criteria, right? As per the Euler's buckling criteria, what we have seen in strength of material or engineering mechanics, right? Whereas in the case of the high-rise structures, if the column is stiff enough about the both the axes due to the wind loads and other loads, then these may be subjected to torsion, right? Therefore, if I take a multi-story building, if, just now I've shown that it is a rigid connection, obviously the entire slab, which is acting as if a diaphragm, can also be rotating, taking along with them these columns, right? Therefore, now the columns are under the torsional buckling, under the torsional buckling, like this, torsional buckling. I'll show them schematically, right? Generally, the thin walled members are light gauge steel structures with bare minimum thickness will be subjected to this torsional buckling only, student, right? Not this torsional buckling is not possible for rolled steel sections, right? Rolled steel sections, right? Now we'll also see them schematically, right? And the next one is however, in the case of multi-story building, multi-story towers, right, they may be subjected to both bending as well as twisting, right? Then that is what called flexural torsional buckling, The examples for this one are that these may occur with unsymmetrical cross sections, like this, right? One axis of the symmetric cross sections, right, such as the channels, right, like this, channels or T sections, right? Here only one axis of symmetry is there, right? Vertical axis of the symmetry, right? Or channel, the horizontal axis of the symmetry is only there, right? Or double angles like this, or equal angle legs of the single angles like this, right? All these are of the one angle symmetry cross sections, right? Or no axis of symmetry cross sections, right? Such as unequal leg single angles, right? Now what I am showing is unequal, right? Unequal, right? This is one length, right? This is a different length, right? Therefore, these are having no axis of symmetry. Therefore, there is no axis of symmetry, neither that of the vertical nor that of the horizontal. Therefore, these type of sections will be subjected to, by default, the flexural torsional buckling. Now I'll show those schematically, student. This is generally in the case of the light gauge steel structures, these may be subjected to the buckling like this, right? Buckling like this. Let me show this schematically, right? Like this. Yes, this I wanted to show, right? Therefore, whereas these rigid connections, rigid movement resisting frames will generally be just, right, subjected to, right, these are subjected to axial load as well as the bending about major axis, right, as well as minor axis, right? These are the bending about major axis. This is called major axis. This is called major axis. This is called the minor axis, student, right? Therefore, now we can see that here I do have the if the column height is very short columns, then that is how the they will be totally under the pure compression failure, right? Whereas if the height is quite long, then obviously the section will be bending about the minor axis, right? Now you can see that if I am applying the load, then it is bending about the minor axis, right? Therefore, this is what called the flexural buckling. Whereas if the flange of this beam section itself is, right, warping like this, right? Warping. Therefore, then there is what called the torsional buckling, right? If that previously it was that flange, student, right? If at all that is right, it is, right, undergoing warping, right, on either side, then that is what called the torsional buckling, right? Therefore this figure, whereas this is what called the local buckling, or we can say it is as if in the case of the beams it is what called the crippling. Now you can see the moment the load is put here, immediately at the intersection, it is local buckling, right? Local buckling, right? There is of the different buckling criteria, different buckling criteria. However, the thin walled light gauge steel structures will be subjected to these torsional bucklings. Now you can see, right, this is the flexural as well as torsional, it is rotating actually, right? Flexural as well as torsional buckling, right? Like this in the cross section. Now you can see that it has just moved away from the longitudinal axis, right? Therefore it is now moved away, right? As well as it has, right, just rotated from its initial position, right? Therefore that is right. Therefore it is under flexion as well as the torsional buckling. This is a light gauge steel structure, student. This is not Indian standard rolled steel section, right? Now this is how we can see that this web is under local flexural buckling, right? Now you can see that, right, this entire web is subjected to, right, now this, right, local flexure. Now you can see there, right, there is a local flexural buckling is happening. That's why we can see here there is a dark spot seen here, right? Therefore it means it has moved away from this axis, x axis, right? Now therefore it has moved. Now even you can see it has moved away, right? Like this. Therefore this is how it has moved, right? Now whereas the third one is the distortional flexural buckling. Now you can see that, right, both of these, actually this is a lipped channel section, student. What I am now showing is a lipped channel section. Therefore now that lipped channel section has totally opened up, right? Now you can see, right, almost it has opened up here, right? Therefore if I cut a section here, if I cut a section, now you can see almost it has just opened up, right? In the previous case it was just web local flexural buckling, right? Now you can see that this web, right, is as if it has punctured there, right, along with that of the flanges also displaced, right? This is what called the distortional flexural buckling. Whereas next one is local distortional flexural, right? Now means this I section which was there, right, this web has distorted as well as leading to the top the distortion of these flanges. This is the I section, student. Previously it was a lipped channel section, and previously it was, once again it was an I section. This was a channel. This is channel I section, right? Therefore this is I section. Now we can see that this is local distortional flexural, right? Local distortional flexural. It is subjected to flexure as well as distortion also. That's why you can see the change in color also, right? Dark color, right? It is subjected to, right, torsion. It is subjected to torsion because of this twisting is also happening. Simultaneously subjected to the distortion also, right? Simultaneously it is bending simultaneously, right? That's why the change in color. Whereas in the previous case you cannot see, we are not able to see any change in color, right? Here we can see change in color, right? Therefore this indicates that there is a distortion, right? Right? Torsional, right? Whereas the next figure is that of the web local, right? Local. Web local means, right, here the moment load is put onto the web, it is not able to transmit to the downward cross section. Therefore it is just distorting like this, right? Therefore almost like a depression is formed in the web part in the lipped channel section. Therefore like this, right? If I see in that cross section, it is called web local buckling, right? Whereas even I'll show another figure where this is another web local. Now you can see, right, here there is no dark color, whereas here you can see, right, depressions are forming, right? Depressions, right? All these, right, are what called web local. This is how the different buckling. One is One is the flexural bending, second flexural buckling, second one is torsional buckling, third one is flexural torsional buckling. However, we already said the different example, and which section can buckle in under which loading. Right now, next one is the sectional classification of the cross section. Right, and therefore this is given in page number 44. Student, now let me go to the page number 44 at a quicker pace set. This is 44, right? 58, right? Yes, this is a buckling class of cross section, right? Rolled steel I section, right? Keeping to that h by b1, if it is greater than 1 and the thickness of the flange is less than 1, then about that major axis, zz axis, this is buckling class A, right? About minor axis, vertical axis, it is buckling class B. Like that, if this thickness is less than 40 mm greater than 40 mm and less than 100 mm, then about zz, the same A buckling class will become B, and about y-axis, that same B class will become C, right? Like that, you please see for welded I sections and for hollow sections, for welded box sections, for channel angle T and solid sections like this, right? As well as that of the built-up section. These are the different shapes of the cross sections of the columns which we will be generally using. This we already discussed in the previous discussion also, right? Now, whereas for these channels, angles, T sections, that about any axis, it is C class only, buckling class only, right? Once we examine the student, now let us also see the design strength also, right? Now let me go to that design strength, student, right? Whereas now we'll say that F is a permissible stress, where Fi is yield stress and Fe is elastic stress. Then we know 1 by F to the power n is equal to 1 by Fe to the power n plus 1 by Fi to the power n. Rearranging the terms, now I'll get F is equal to Fe multiplied by Fy, Fe to the power n, Fy to the power n, whole to the power 1 by n, right? This is actually the Merchant-Rankine formula, right, which was given in IAS 800 1984 for working stress design method, right? Right? However, now we are having this partial safety factor 0.6. Therefore, now F is equal to, right, right. Now I have to have, right, 0.6 FCC multiplied by Fy divided by FCC to the power n, Fy to the power n, whole to the power 1 by n is the IS 800 1984 formula. As per the Merchant-Rankine formula, is a permissible axial compressive stress, student, right? However, as per the new code, now we need to go to this page number 34, right? Let me go to the page number 34, student, then I'll discuss this at a quicker pace. Page number 34, 48, yes. This is how that for the design compressive strength, P should be less than PD, where PD is equal to AE multiplied by FCD, where now code says that what is AE? AE is effective sectional area as defined in class 7.3.2, and FCD is the design compressive stress obtained as per this class 7.1.2.1, right? Now, what is the 7.1.2.1 is the design compressive stress FCD of axially loaded compression member is given by this. FCD is equal to Fi divided by gamma m naught divided by pi square root of pi square minus lambda square. This is given by x. Fi divided by gamma m naught should be less than or equal to Fi divided by gamma m naught, where pi is equal to 0.5 multiplied by 1 minus alpha multiplied by lambda minus 0.2 plus lambda square, where lambda is a non-dimensional effective strength ratio. Just now we already seen square root of Fi divided by FCC, or that is equal to square root of Fi multiplied by KL by R whole square divided by pi square E, where FCC is the Euler's buckling stress, pi square E divided by lambda square, where lambda is equal to KL by R, right? Effective strength ratio whole square, right? That is how of appropriate radius of gyration. Alpha is the imperfection factor as given in the table 7, and this Roman X is the stress reduction factor. Please see this is a table 8 for different buckling class, slenderness ratio and yield stress as given by this X is equal to 1 divided by pi plus square root of pi square minus lambda square, where lambda m naught is equal to partial safety factor for the material of the strength, right? However, the classification of the different sections under the different buckling classes A, B, C, D is given in this table 10. Just now we have seen that buckling class, right? The stress reduction factor X, the design compressive and the design compressive stress FCD for different buckling class, yield stress and effective stiffness ratio is given in the table 8, that we will see for convenience. However, even they are also given in the form of the curves in figure 8 for different buckling class. Now that we will see. This what is student effective length of the compression members shall be calculated from the actual length L of the member considering the rotational relative translational boundary conditions at the ends, right? The actual length shall be taken as the length from center to center of the intersections with the supporting members in the plane of the buckling deformations, right? Now, however, the effective length where the boundary conditions in the plane of the buckling, can be assessed. The effective length KL can be calculated on the basis of the table 11, where the frame analysis does not consider the equilibrium of the frame structure in the deformed shape. Second order analysis or advanced analysis, the effective length of the compression members in such cases shall be calculated using this procedure given in Annex D1. Just now we have seen that. Even we have discussed in the previous subheading, right? The effective length of the stapled columns in the single story shall be as given in the Annex D2. We already discussed that, student, right? Now, the next compression members in trusses, right? In case of the bolted, riveted and welded trusses and braced frames, the effective length KL of the compression member shall be taken as 0.7 to 1 times the distance between the center of the connections, depending on the degree of the end restraint provided. In the case of the members of the trusses buckling in the plane perpendicular plane of the truss, the effective length KL shall be taken as the distance between the center to center of the intersection, means K is equal to 1 only, right? The design of angle struts shall be according to class 7.5 only, right? Now this is what the column buckling curves, student, right? Column buckling curves for different A, B, C, D buckling classes, right? They are given in the form of FCD divided by Fy. FCD divided by Fy for the non-dimensional stiffness ratio value, right? Once you know that for each of this buckling class, then you can find out FCD by Fy. But already Fy is known. Therefore, from this the permissible strength in the or design compressive strength can be calculated from either from this figure 8, or even alternatively you can use this table 8A like this, where stress reduction factors are given for column buckling class A. Let us say for difference stiffness ratio 10 to 250, student, right? For different yield stress values Fy in terms of Newton per meter square, starting from 200 to 540 MPa. Let us say generally we will be using Fy is equal to 250. Therefore, let us say Fy is equal to 250 and stiffness ratio is equal to 100. Therefore, for that now I do have that stress reduction factor. If it is buckling class A is, then that X, Roman X is equal to 0.579, right? Likewise, this table 8B gives the stress reduction factor X for buckling class B, right? Whereas table 8C gives the stress reduction factor for buckling class C, and this table 8D gives the stress reduction factor X for buckling class D respectively, right? Or alternatively, these tables 9A will give the design compressive stress FCD directly in terms of Newton per meter square column buckling class A. Let us say in terms of stiffness ratios, right? Starting from 10 to 250 stiffness ratio, right? Starting from Fy is equal to 200 to 540. Let us say now I do have a stiffness ratio of 100 for 250. Therefore, for 100 and 250 directly, if it is buckling class A, then the design compressive stress is equal to 132 MPa. If it is in between, let us say it is 106, then you interpolate in between. For 100 it is 132, for 110 it is 115. Therefore, for 106 is how much? Now you can interpolate. That is how you can do for using table 9A for class A, classification from table 9B for class B, right? From table 9C for class C classification, whereas for class D we can use table 9D for finding out FCD, design compressive stress. Design compressive stress. This is how the design compressive stresses can be evaluated, student. Right? Design compressive stresses can be evaluated. This just now we have seen. Just now we have seen. Okay, student. These are the different product specifications we have discussed in today's class. I hope you enjoyed the discussions what we had in today's class. Right? If you have really enjoyed the discussions, right? Don't forget to click like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll meet in the next class with the designs of these compression members with numeric problems. Right? Till then, bye bye, students.